Two American agents, disguised as a married couple, calmly approach a White House up ahead. Meanwhile, snipers hidden deep in the woods are locked in position, ready to strike. At the same time, U.S. military command has the target house fully secured. The female agent knocks on the door, pretending to be lost only to throw in a flashbang grenade. Immediately, the ambush team bursts out like a swarm of bees. Within seconds, everyone inside the house is under control. Their mission: retrieve a highly sensitive document. But why is this elite special ops unit even here? And who exactly are the people inside that house? Why did the US go through all this effort for a secret purge? It all started not long ago, with a covert task force within the US. They were shadow warriors, answering directly to the president, assigned to missions no one knows about and granted the authority to defy international law. Their work involved operations too dark to reveal to the public. Assassinations, setups, smear campaigns. No tactic was off limits. Before every mission, members had to sign a life or death waiver and sever all ties with the government. Success or failure, no matter the outcome, all traces must be wiped clean. The goal was to ensure no one even knew the team existed. Their team leader was Mark, a natural-born genius with bipolar disorder. He was like a powder keg: one spark, and he'd explode. His mother once tied a rubber band around his wrist, telling him to snap it when emotions got out of control. As he grew older, Mark's condition stabilized, and he worked hard to join the Navy. He later racked up countless victories on the battlefield. Thanks to that, he was recruited into the covert ops team. One day, the team received a new mission: raid a Russian safe house on Christmas Street. The target was a hard drive containing crucial intel. Mark led the team out immediately and surrounded the house. Meanwhile, their tech support team of high-level specialists moved into position for remote assistance. They deployed drones equipped with thermal imaging to scan the number of people inside. Then they hacked the surveillance system to take control of the house's security cameras. With real-time visuals, command could monitor the situation closely. The female agent approached the house, using the same lost excuse to get in, but instead, she tossed in a flashbang and kicked off the lightning raid. The ambush team stormed in, quickly overpowering everyone inside. Within minutes, they had full control of the situation. The Russian agents were caught off guard and forced to surrender. During a search, the team found a server and hard drive hidden in a back room. They packed up the materials, photographed the captives, and uploaded everything for ID verification. Just then, a tech staff member noticed a weak heat signature on the second floor. Team coordinator John quickly alerted Mark, who was guarding outside. Mark ordered the female agent to investigate upstairs. She cautiously climbed the stairs and headed toward the anomaly. When they opened the door, the room appeared empty, just a false reading, they thought. But then, another signal popped up, this time behind a wall. Turns out, a lone Russian agent was hiding there, armed and ready. As soon as the female agent saw him, he fired and took her down. The special ops team returned fire, and a fierce shootout erupted. The Russian agent released an unidentified toxic gas during the chaos. Seeing this, John gave the green light to eliminate all threats immediately. One U.S. agent was fatally shot in the crossfire. At that moment, the building's self-destruct system kicked in, and flames erupted from within. The remaining agents reacted swiftly, neutralizing all surviving Russian operatives. Even one man who tried to flee was immediately intercepted by Mark, who was lying in wait. Before dying, the man gritted his teeth and swore Mark's team would pay dearly for this day. But before he could say another word, Mark silenced him with a bullet. The remaining agents quickly gathered the intel and escaped the burning house. Before the police arrived, they blew up the entire house to eliminate all traces. Meanwhile, the logistics team remotely breached the neighborhood surveillance systems to ensure a smooth escape. Soon after, the results of the incident investigation were released. Reports confirmed that all 7 deceased were Russian intelligence operatives. One of them, killed by Mark, was only 18 years old. Since no evidence linked the scene to U.S. agents, authorities assumed it was an internal Russian conflict. Still, there were suspicions that it had been a targeted attack on Russian nationals. Regardless, the special ops team was never mentioned in any reports. But what no one knew was that one of the victims held a powerful position in Russian intelligence. His death would trigger a much larger and more tragic chain of events. 16 months passed in the blink of an eye. News broke in Syria. Russia had just lost a large cache of radioactive material, enough to craft 66 dirty bombs, a terrifying amount. The US immediately went on high alert. If that material got out, the consequences would be catastrophic. Mark was once again called to lead the special ops team, this time headed to Southeast Asia. Following a trail of leads, they intercepted a suspicious cargo ship, but inside, they found only weapons and forged artworks. There was no sign of any radioactive materials. Mark immediately realized the intel was completely off. Despite trying to stay calm, he couldn't hide his growing frustration. Back at base, Mark furiously confronted Ollie, the officer who sourced the intel. He firmly stated that the tip-off Ollie got was unreliable. Ollie, though clearly anxious, stood by her informant's credibility. She explained the source was a local special police officer, someone who shouldn't have made such a critical error. Due to the mission's severity, a debrief was held at the U.S. Embassy the next day. Though Mark had lost his temper earlier, he took full responsibility during the meeting. He didn't shy away from acknowledging the mission's failure. But the more he spoke, the more troubled the officials looked. If the radioactive material had fallen into the wrong hands, the outcome would be unthinkable. After the meeting, Mark noticed Ollie acting strangely. He invited her to the beach to unwind and talk. Ollie confessed she also had bipolar disorder, just like Mark. Her temper had strained her relationship with her family for years. Hearing this, Mark suggested she take time off to focus on her family. But with the missing radioactive material still unaccounted for, Ollie couldn't rest. Then came an unexpected turning point. A mysterious man suddenly showed up out of nowhere. He revealed a hard drive and claimed to know the location of the stolen radioactive material. It was the first real lead the U.S. had. The man was immediately taken in for interrogation. To everyone's shock, he was the same informant Ollie had spoken to before. He said the drive held the exact coordinates of the missing material. But to unlock it, the U.S. had to guarantee him safe passage out of the country. And willing to be blackmailed, the U.S. brought in experts to examine the drive. The analysis revealed the hard drive was encrypted with extreme complexity. Its encryption level was far beyond the team's current capabilities. Even worse, the data inside would be automatically wiped in 8 hours. To buy time, Ollie decided to personally interrogate the source. The man, who called himself Dewar, claimed the data could not only recover the materials, but also bring down his entire government. His bold statement stunned everyone. Ollie especially was furious. She warned Dewar not to play games with them. To prove he was telling the truth, Dewar told them to examine one of the fake paintings seized earlier. Although unsure of his motive, they sent someone to investigate. Sure enough, behind the painting was powdered radioactive material. That confirmed Dewar wasn't bluffing. But it also meant the situation was far more dangerous than expected. And willing to be held hostage, Mark ordered the tech team to crack the hard drive faster. At the same time, they began a full physical and psychological evaluation of Dewar. Surprisingly, Dewar cooperated without resistance. In fact, he passed every test with flying colors. Just then, the Russian minister stationed in the area William arrived at the embassy in a panic. He demanded the U.S. hand over the traitor, Dewar. While Dewar was undergoing tests, a new threat suddenly emerged. Two foreign agents had been hiding in the embassy for some time. They disguised themselves as technicians and attempted to assassinate Dewar. But Dewar had already noticed strange symbols on their shoes. In an instant, he realized their true intentions. Even with one hand cuffed to a hospital bed, his combat instincts kicked in. He snapped off a metal bed rail and broke free. Then he launched into a fierce counterattack. A brutal fight erupted in the infirmary, filled with chaos and intensity. Before long, Dewar managed to kill both assassins. When U.S. security forces arrived, they found him blooded, standing over two bodies. Ollie rushed to the scene the moment she got the news. She was shocked at the bloody aftermath. Doubts about Dewar's true identity grew stronger than ever. Meanwhile, Mark realized the situation was spiraling out of control. Highly trained assassins don't just walk into an embassy lightly. They were elite assets, requiring serious resources to train. Yet someone risked burning them, which meant the intel Dewar carried was unimaginably valuable. Eventually, the U.S. agreed to escort Dewar out in exchange for the hard drive password. Mark immediately set the extraction plan in motion. He alerted John, head of logistics, to prepare backup and support. Then Mark personally submitted an asylum request for Dewar at the embassy. This meant they were severing ties with the U.S. government entirely. Once they left embassy grounds, they'd be on their own, no protection, no backup. Every move they made from then on would be their own responsibility. Before leaving, each team member was implanted with a biometric tracking chip. John confirmed via the system. There were 7 agents involved in this mission. With preparations complete, the team set off for the extraction point. Unbeknownst to them, Russian operatives were quietly tracking every move. The local authorities also wanted Dewar dead and had set a deadly trap along the way. On the way to the extraction point, Mark took the chance to ask Dewar why he had turned against his country. Dewar replied that the government had destroyed his family. Clearly, there was a deeper story that no one had uncovered yet. To ensure the team's safety, logistics deployed real-time satellite surveillance. They even hacked into the local traffic systems to take control. Using the data collected, they plotted the fastest and safest escape route. They also subtly manipulated traffic lights to allow the convoy smooth passage. But despite all the planning, the team was ambushed. A motorbike squad suddenly appeared behind them, tailing aggressively. As soon as logistics noticed something wrong, they warned the team immediately. But before they could respond further, an unknown force cut their surveillance feed. All screens went black, total loss of control. Worse still, all communication between the two teams was severed. John had no choice but to rewind the surveillance footage. It revealed one of the motorcycles had planted a strange object on the convoy's vehicle. Everyone went pale, but it was already too late. A deafening explosion shook the road. The vitals monitor blared. 2 agents were killed instantly. The rest inside the vehicle suffered serious injuries. Mark's vehicle escaped fatalities but was severely damaged. To make things worse, the motorbike assassins encircled them. They were ready to finish off the entire squad. Under relentless gunfire, the team found themselves cornered. Thankfully, the communication link was finally restored. Amy charged through the bullets to aid the injured teammates, but their wounds were critical. She could only stabilize them temporarily. Mark ordered logistics to hack a nearby vehicle to make an escape. As soon as it was ready, Mark led the survivors into the new getaway car. They worked in sync, taking down the attackers as they moved. Mark retreated carefully, guided by the logistics team's directions. The situation seemed momentarily under control. Suddenly, a suicide attacker charged at the car carrying Dewar. John shouted at Mark to protect the asset at all costs. Fortunately, Dewar's combat skills weren't ordinary. He took the assassin down in seconds. Meanwhile, Dark managed to secure another vehicle. The team quickly regrouped for the next retreat. Mark rushed to his critically injured comrade. The injuries were too severe, there was little hope left. John's voice came through the earpiece, urging an immediate retreat. Left with no choice, Mark handed the dying man to grenades. Then, he clenched his jaw and led the rest away. As they drove out of the kill zone, a massive explosion echoed behind them. Grief was etched into everyone's faces. But they knew they had to keep going, or the sacrifice would be in vain. After the fight, they had run dangerously low on ammo, and their vehicle began to malfunction again. With urgency rising, Mark decided to head for the nearest safe house. The logistics team scanned the area and mapped the shortest route. Not long after, the car carrying Mark and his teammates slowly entered the base. On the surface, the place looked like just another diner, but in reality, it was a hidden resupply station set up in advance. The restaurant owner was actually one of their embedded informants. At the same time, the logistics team hacked into the local surveillance grid. They monitored every movement around the diner for potential threats. When Mark entered, the owner gave him a subtle nod. Then he led the team into the kitchen where ammunition was already waiting. The fresh supplies temporarily restored their firepower. John then informed Mark that the extraction vehicle would arrive in 6 minutes. Until then, they had to hold position inside the diner and stay on high alert. What they didn't know was that Russian agents were tracking their every move. The enemy had already uncovered Dewar's full background. Their real target was the hard drive in U.S. custody. Mark and his team anxiously awaited the order to leave, but assassins sent by the local government were still lurking nearby. Mark glanced out through the diner's glass window. His eyes locked with those of the assassin leader. Looking around, Mark realized the street was crawling with armed bikers. John's voice came over the headset, "Stay inside the diner, no exceptions." But after a moment's thought, Mark made a bold choice. He walked out to confront the enemy leader. He warned him, "Pretend you never saw us or risk all-out war." To his surprise, the man replied that the contents of the hard drive were too important to ignore. Tensions surged, neither side willing to back down. Negotiations collapsed completely. Furious, Mark cursed and stormed back into the diner. Right then, the final extraction vehicle arrived. Without delay, Mark ordered immediate evacuation. But just seconds later, an enormous explosion rocked the diner. The place was instantly torn apart in a fiery blast. Every team member was affected by the detonation. Dark suffered devastating leg injuries, his legs covered in blood and unable to move. Mark was thrown by the blast, dazed and disoriented. Suddenly, 2 female assassins stormed into the diner, attacking without hesitation. In a split-second decision, Dewar jumped in to help. He teamed up with Mark and Amy, each took on 1 assassin. After a brutal fight, the trio successfully took both of them down. But before they could catch their breath, more assassins poured in. Gunfire erupted as bullets rained down on the diner. With no time to waste, they rushed to the getaway car. But the danger was far from over. Due to a lack of medical supplies, Dark's wounds remained untreated. The team was thrown into a state of despair. To make matters worse, the next rendezvous point was still 12 miles away, and time was quickly running out. Though the logistics team had mapped the shortest route, for a team being hunted, nothing was guaranteed. Out of nowhere, the car was struck hard. Before they could react, a group of motorbike assassins appeared at a nearby intersection. They quickly surrounded the vehicle in front of an abandoned building. Seeing how heavily armed the attackers were, Mark ordered everyone to retreat into the building behind them. Dark knew his injuries were too severe, escape was nearly impossible. He insisted on staying behind to hold off the enemy. Seeing the determination in his eyes, Mark had no choice but to agree. Mark then ordered Amy to escort Dewar inside the building. He himself climbed to the highest point to cover Dark from above. Despite the searing pain, Mark grabbed a weapon and opened fire relentlessly. He fought tooth and nail, taking out several of the attackers. But in the end, the enemy numbers were overwhelming. He collapsed from exhaustion, unable to fight any longer. The assassin leader didn't hesitate. He shot Mark in the head. At that critical moment, Mark's team had suffered devastating losses. Meanwhile, the logistics crew raced against time, analyzing data to find a way out. But the odds were grim. The assassins still had the upper hand. Outnumbered, Mark was forced to retreat deeper into the building. He led the others carefully, trying to stay hidden from enemy patrols. John provided real-time updates and directions to the extraction point. But as they turned into a hallway, a sudden ambush took them by surprise. In the chaos, Amy became separated while trying to save a terrified little girl. She was forced to hide in a storage room, hoping for a chance to fight back. Elsewhere, Mark continued searching the building, desperate to find Amy. He asked John for her coordinates, but John responded that Amy's location couldn't be determined. He urged Mark to evacuate with Dewar immediately. Mark realized that to protect the asset, they were willing to abandon a teammate. But Mark couldn't accept that kind of sacrifice. He chose to ignore John's orders. He swore he wouldn't leave until Amy was safe. By now, the extraction plane had arrived at the pickup site. There were only 10 minutes left on the clock. Even with John pressing him to hurry, Mark refused to give up on Amy. Dewar stepped forward, offering to help find and rescue her. With no other choice, Mark placed his trust in Dewar. He released him from his restraints and handed him a pistol, but not without warning any betrayal would mean death for them all. Following Mark's command, the logistics team cut power to the hallway. Using the cover of darkness, the two men followed the sounds of gunfire toward Amy's possible location. Meanwhile, Amy was doing everything she could to survive. She blocked the door with furniture and found a roll of duct tape. She taped two grenades to the door and wall, creating a deadly trap. Then she dragged over a mattress to shield herself and the little girl. She pulled the pins and waited for the enemy to breach the door. When they did, the explosion blasted them backward. Amy quickly checked the child. Thankfully, she wasn't harmed. Without wasting time, Amy left the room to find the others. But right outside, she was ambushed by another assassin. Luckily, Amy's marksmanship was elite. She used cover to launch a fierce counterattack. Elsewhere, Dewar was fighting off multiple enemies. He struck first, taking out a lone attacker. Even outnumbered, Dewar's combat skills proved formidable. Despite being alone, Dewar held his ground against the overwhelming enemy force. In just a short time, he wiped out the entire ambush squad. Elsewhere in the building, Mark came face to face with the assassin leader again. The man tried once more to bargain surrender Dewar, and they'd be spared. But Mark wasn't one to strike deals under pressure. His answer was a cold, decisive bullet. Then, he tossed a grenade at the enemy's position for good measure. Meanwhile, Amy was cornered by a massive assassin inside a room. As he approached menacingly, Amy pretended to beg for her life. The moment he let his guard down, she struck. With a shard of broken glass hidden behind her, she stabbed him in the neck. But the man wasn't dead yet. He came back swinging in rage. He pummeled Amy relentlessly, leaving her barely conscious. Just in time, Mark and Dewar arrived to back her up. Guided by the little girl, they found the room where Amy was trapped. Together, they freed her from the deadly encounter. The group wasted no time and fled the danger zone. They drove at full speed toward the extraction point. But by now, they were running dangerously out of time. The extraction plane's engines were already fired up, preparing for takeoff. Meanwhile, the assassin organization still refused to give up. Halfway to the runway, the assassin leader reappeared. He stood in the road, his eyes wild with rage and determination. Mark knew there was no time left to hesitate. He immediately ordered the logistics team to deploy the armed drone. John complied, locking onto the target without delay. The operator confirmed visual and initiated the strike. A high-pitched whine filled the air as the drone released its payload. In seconds, the assassin and his vehicle were blown to pieces. With the threat neutralized, Mark floored it toward the runway. The aircraft waited on the tarmac, engines howling impatiently. It was now or never they had to make it. At the very last second, they reached the airport gates. Dewar stayed true to his word and gave up the hard drive's password. Mark rushed over immediately, not wasting a single second. The logistics team entered the code into their system. Instantly, the files unlocked, revealing the exact location of the stolen materials. Everything was going surprisingly smooth. A strange unease began to settle in Mark's gut. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with Dewar, but he had no solid reason to stop him from boarding the plane. Fortunately, Amy would also be on the plane to see the mission through. No one could have guessed what was about to happen next. Moments after takeoff, Dewar's heart rate began to spike. At the same time, the team's computers were hit by a mysterious virus. All their files vanished in an instant. On screen, a series of strange symbols flickered. They gradually formed into a shadow image. As it became clearer, it was the face of the 18-year-old Russian boy Mark had killed. John stared in horror as the truth began to unfold. At that moment, John finally realized what the hard drive password meant. In Russian, the word translated to unification. Suddenly, John remembered that covert purge a year ago. The address back then wasn't at 111 Christmas Street. In that split second, it all came together. This wasn't a coincidence, it was a trap, set by Russia from the start. Their goal: wipe out the entire U.S. Special Ops team in one strike. And Dewar, he was a double agent all along. From beginning to end, he served only one master: Russia. But just as John uncovered the full truth, a Russian strike team stormed the operations room. No one had time to react. In seconds, the entire room was filled with lifeless bodies. At the same time, Mark was leaving in a vehicle when he felt a sudden dread. He stopped, turning back to stare at the plane that had just taken off. Unease and fear clouded his face. He had no way of knowing if Amy was still alive on board. It was all part of a masterfully orchestrated revenge. The Russian boy Mark had lit the fuse of this tragedy. His mother was a woman of immense wealth and power. She lost her only son during that mission a year ago. To avenge him, she poured everything into building this deadly trap. Dewar, who seemed like a valuable informant, was her greatest weapon. In reality, he was a sleeper agent placed by the Russians long ago. The moment he gave intel to Ollie, the revenge plan was set in motion. He tricked the U.S. into chasing phantom radioactive material. Step by step, he earned their trust, then coordinated with Russian agents from within. Eventually, they located the logistics team's hidden base and executed every single support operative. The once unbeatable Special Ops team now lay broken by one mother's vengeance. Mark was the sole survivor of this nightmare, but now he faced interrogation by the CIA. The entire logistics division had been wiped out. Mark and his team never knew the truth behind their mission. As for Amy and the pilot, there was no word, only silence. Mark replayed everything over and over in his head. The more he thought, the more convinced he became Dewar was far from done. This wasn't the end, it was just the beginning of a bigger war. And with that, the film reaches its shocking conclusion. In short, the plot of the movie is not too complicated. Create a tense and breathtaking escort mission. But it delivers a tense, high-stakes escort mission from start to finish. So, what did you think of Mark, a fighter who's both powerful and painfully human? Thanks for watching, and see you in the next movie review.